Okay. Well, so I definitely want to talk about CRTC.
I feel like we talked about that already.
You, we did. I mean, okay, so we'll definitely cover the smartphone thing because we said we would last week, and I still really want to.
The wants
Um,
and needs thing.
well, especially because you have a dilemma,
Yeah, I guess it's
and
related.
on Future Chat we did a PSA for the unlocking thing, right?
Yes, we can talk about that.
So now I'll just mention it again that on this show, go
We can
unlock your
do.
phone, Canada.
Okay, so we have stuff to talk about that. So we can do smartphones and then carriers plans as a follow-up topic.
Sure.
I mean, not follow up in the
Yeah.
podcast sense, but
Mhm.
following the first topic.
Yep.
And I think that should be good.
Okay. And we still can't talk. I still am not allowed to talk about the future of food.
No, you
Okay.
just delete that. Just get that out of there.
But now it says my first 5 weeks instead of my first week.
You're gonna have to keep updating it.
Yeah,
You
my
have to do
first
this
nine
for
weeks. My
first 9 weeks. Ever hoping. Your
I
chance will
do
come in 2 weeks on future chat.
I do have a customer service complaint with
Mm.
this that might fit in, but it doesn't really. It's not that
I
good of a story.
I feel like that would fit in the online reviews topic a bit better.
Yeah.
Because then we could talk about how you should leave a review about your experience.
I'm not it's fine. I'm not that hard on it.
Okay, how about this? We can talk about online reviews, use your chef's plate experience as kind of like a related topic, and you can say, like, hey, I found chef's plate through an online review.
Mhm.
Or I've read some online reviews about chef's plate, and my experience does or does not match up with the aforementioned reviews I read.
Right. It see that kind of works, but it also kind of doesn't because I didn't actually look at any reviews online for
Well, our
it.
listeners don't need to know that.
Well, I don't want
We're,
to
we're,
lie to them.
we're here to make a good show, Rob. You have to do what it takes.
It's not about journalistic integrity.
Okay.
Um,
What do you want to?
well, so first, like I assume there's a pre-show banter somewhere in that conversation we just had. I would have some follow-up about commenting that I just wanted a pat on the back. That's all.
Okay.
Um, last episode we talked about leaving comments on your code, and I'm
Yes.
happy to say that my latest macro that I did, I now just like at work, first of all, I now just do macros. So when I say, oh, I made a thing that lets people like get rid of all this work that you have to do. Everyone at work doesn't even blink. They're just like, oh, great. Can we use it? Like, when can we get our hands on it? Um, so I made a thing to generate spreadsheets for the thing we have to do. So it sounds not similar to what you're doing, but like same idea. You're
Okay.
taking information and then generating a spreadsheet with it so that they have the separate information.
That's not at all what I'm doing, but okay.
Fine. Uh, but I wrote this entire macro and have comments for every single line,
Ooh.
or
And
at
how
least
many
every
lines are we
second
talking
line.
about?
It's probably about 150,
Oh,
200
wow.
lines. Like, so if I name like five variables that are all related to each other, this is like naming these variables. That's not, doesn't need that much explanation.
Right.
But I at least explained what every group of things does.
Right.
And I'm
Like,
very pleased.
like if you have a section that formats
Mhm.
stuff, then you say this formats this sheet in this way or something. Like
Yeah.
if someone else went in there and said, why is this making all these cells yellow?
Yeah.
Then it's like, oh, formatting for
Yeah,
whatever.
exactly. Like, yeah, there's a thing that goes through and filters the rows based on a criteria. Like, it's like this line does that thing, and then
Right.
why it, like, where it gets it from and all that. Like, I actually did a responsible coding, and it was literally only because of our conversation. And I'm actually like, it wasn't actually that hard. Like we discussed and knew it would be if you actually start a project or in the very early conception, like after you have recorded a couple of macros just to see kind of what steps you need to take. If you at that stage start commenting everything, it's quite easy. And then the only thing you have to remember is when you're going back and fixing bugs, to add the comments, especially if you're like, this thing is weird and this is why I did it this way. Like you can actually be very helpful to your past self
Right.
and future self.
Yeah. I don't know. It's hard because for one, if I start trying to comment stuff, then I'll be like, "Hey, I should explain what this does." I'm like, "Well, that's obvious,"
Hmm.
but then it may or may not be.
Yeah, yeah, you have to do it even if it is
Right.
obvious.
Or I'll skip over something and be like, "Oh, I don't need to comment that." But then I'll go back and be like, "What did I do this for?"
Yeah,
I'm like, "Oh yeah, now I
yeah.
remember."
It's got to be all or nothing. You can't let yourself do that. Even the super obvious things where it's like where even the code itself is like the keywords that you have to use or the function you have to run or whatever it is, even when they are super self-explanatory, I was still like, and this does this. Just
Right.
just do it.
Well, and I think what you talked about debugging, if you have to add something in to make something work,
Hmm.
but it otherwise doesn't look like it needs to or is supposed to be there, then just
Yeah.
comment and say, added this to make it work. Like,
Yeah.
so that someone else comes in and be like, oh, they don't need this part. And then they like delete it out or comment it out and it suddenly doesn't work. It's like, oh, why did that happen? But if
Yeah.
you leave something there saying had to add this in order to make it run, then that's
Yeah.
probably beneficial.
The last thing or the next thing I guess that I have to do is make sure that I have a robust version control system, especially because we're wrapping around to the stage of competition where the first macro I ever made is coming into use again.
Mm,
And that's first of all, that one is just a mess of ifs. Like I sent you a slice of it and it's just like nested ifs and like it's all over the place.
yeah.
It's very robust, but it's not commented at all. And so if someone finds a bug with it, or if even I find a bug with it coming through the next competition, I have to go and make sure that first of all that I go and fix the bug properly on the most updated version that doesn't have any other past bugs. Then I have to go and make sure that everyone else's new source file is updated to the newest thing, like everywhere that it has been put or shared. And then I have to let everyone who used it before know that there's an updated version that they can go find. Like it's all, and I haven't gone out of my way so far to leave it. Like there's always a screen on my macros that says like this is where you enter all the information and this is like the button you hit to hit go. I don't have anything on that page that says like this is version 1.2 and I don't I don't know how you're supposed to necessarily do that within Visual Basic. I'm not sure there is kind of a good syntax for how you're supposed to recognize what version things are.
Like programmatically? Well, I
Kind
don't know
of, well,
what you mean.
yeah. Like I'm trying to think of a good example. Like in WordPress, for instance, or in
So
PHP files.
here's a suggestion
Yeah.
before you continue, because I have kind of a similar. I had at one point a while ago sent out a beta version. Actually, I guess it would be an alpha version
Mhm.
of the project I'm working on. But I password protected it and also put in like an expiry date in it.
Okay.
So in the workbook open module or pr- project or however you want to call it,
Mhm.
there is a piece of code that ran and said if today
Oh,
is
interesting.
less than or greater than whatever date,
Mhm.
give a message saying this book has expired, blah 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 blah, and then close.
Hmm.
Now this obviously doesn't work if they have macros disabled, but it
Right.
still shouldn't really matter because if the functionality of the book depends on the
Yeah.
macros being enabled, then it should run once they enable the macros, right?
Mhm.
And then it'll say this book has expired, and then you
Mhm.
close it, right? And then you can disable the expiry date for them once they contact you and say, "Hey, my workbook's expired," or you can send them the updated version.
Right. So you like because like in modern apps now have a similar concept, but it's like they'll you can have it automatically or manually check for new versions of the app and then go fetch the new version.
Right.
But like
No,
this
and
is a
that,
rudimentary version of that, basically.
yeah, it's localized version checking.
Yeah.
Like you can't because yeah, there's at least as far as I know, there's no easy way to tap into like a server address and communicate and do a bunch of
Hmm.
stuff within Excel.
Yeah.
But or well, the other thing that apps do is they'll have like a separate license file,
Yeah.
and I guess that is one way of doing it that your workbook needs to run with an associated license key. But I
Hmm.
think it's kind of going a bit far, trying to implement that sort of
Yeah.
process.
If you have strict in quotes control over the file system where this macro is going to be run, I just had an idea of a thing. Like normally what they would do is they would have a string, they would send a ping or a request to a remote server that would check what the most updated version is and check the version that you have. And if there was a newer version on the server, it would let pop up and say, you can download the new version now. For instance, we have a shared drive that all our files are on that we run macros from. If I put even like just a text file that was called 1.2.4 or something and put it in some hidden, like some nested folder somewhere on the drive,
Right.
and then I had a line in the code that checked what that number was in that file, uh, and then compared it to the
Hmm.
version in the file itself, you could rudimentarily be like, oh, there's a newer version, go get it, and then direct people, like give them a URL or something.
Yeah, as long as it was always being run on the same
Exactly. Yeah.
network. Like if you're sending it out and people are using it offline or whatever, then obviously
Mhm.
that's not going to work. And that's where the fully localized
Yeah.
version checking or expiry or whatever would
You'd have to
work probably
override it.
better.
Yeah.
Uh, so I also wanted to do something because again, like I password protect my workbook, but people sometimes just need to unlock it or whatever.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like the workbook automatically like resets the password whenever it's unlocked.
Hmm.
So in theory, like it should be able to relock it itself. But I want to also be able to remotely change passwords of. But I don't think there's a way to do that because again,
No.
it's like I'd want to be able to like set the password in the same way that you're talking about, like have
Mhm.
some text document that's named whatever, and that would be the password. So you just tell Excel
That's actually interesting. That
to
could
go
work.
grab the password from wherever, right?
Yeah.
And then you can remotely change it that way.
Yeah. It's
But
so that's fully security by obscurity, but it probably would work.
yeah, because no one's gonna know enough or care enough
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
go change that,
Hmm.
right? There's a contact the Excel admin. I don't know. Maybe make
Right.
yourself up a title
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
someone's gonna have to replace you eventually.
I wonder if you could go onto like I have a web server already, like a private server. If I could write a little API that just had version numbers built in, like I could actually ping my own server and check what the version number is.
I'm sure NSERC would have something to say about you accessing a personal private server.
Yeah. I mean, it's doing it in a very public, transparent way, but it would be doing it, and that would be kind of hilarious.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to go through like I would have to learn so much. It'd be fun, but I wouldn't do it.
Yeah. You have like your I don't know if they even monitor it, but it's like why are all these like workstations accessing this private IP address?
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I just want to say, like, repeat from last time. Comment. We got off track, off on a tangent, but I enjoyed my first actual commenting experience.
That's good.
Do you want to talk about? Well, so we talked last month about a topic for this month being the end of the year and all, and seeing as how both of us, you especially, have super old phones, relatively, you might have a vested interest in us talking about what our next smartphone would look like.
Hmm. Yeah, like I recently had a bit of a experience with my phone. Long story short, I thought it wasn't charging anymore.
Mhm.
Uh, Spoiler alert, it was actually the USB cable. But I started thinking about, okay, well, if I have to replace my phone, which one would I want? Um, I I've said before, at this point, there's not really much difference between iOS and Android aside from the hardware itself, really. Like functionality wise, they're pretty similar. They both have
Yeah.
again, there's a lot more variance on the Android side with different devices and what they can do. But
Mhm.
if you look at like the highest end Android versus the highest end iPhone,
Yeah.
and even somewhat in between, like if you look at the 8 and the, I don't know, the Galaxy S8 kind of thing, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Versus the X and the, say, the Note 8.
Right.
You can see pretty comparable specs and capabilities of the devices. But then you have other aspects like I have a Samsung smartwatch. So for me to not get a Samsung phone or even an Android phone at all,
Mhm.
that would have quite a bit more of an impact than it otherwise would have. For me to just switch over to, say, iOS,
Yeah.
where I kind of maintain the same independent functionality of the device, but not have the same sort of integration with my wearables.
Mhm.
And it's it's weird because I'm kind of in that position for the first time, whereas a lot of Apple folk have kind of been in that kind of position for a while, I'd say.
Yeah.
Even outside of the Apple Watch now being a thing.
Mhm.
I think before there were still ecosystem elements that played a pretty big part in choosing whether you stayed with iOS or tried something else.
Right.
iTunes was obviously a pretty big factor until they came out with the iTunes for PC, and that helped a lot
Right.
of people, I think.
Yeah.
But I think you just have a level of familiarity and comfort that you just don't want to deviate from if you don't have to.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So this last round, I was still kind of thinking about what type of phone I'd want and what I really want out of a phone. And a part of me doesn't feel right picking a phone solely based on like a $200 watch. Like when
Right.
you're
Yeah.
spending
Yeah.
upwards of $600 to $800 on a phone, if
Yeah.
you get a brand new top of the line phone, even $1,200 if you get like the Note 8 or the
Yeah.
iPhone
The
X
10. Yeah.
or the 10. Sorry.
I've done it too. Don't worry.
I mean, the X is right there.
Yeah.
Uh, so I wanted to get your thoughts on, I guess, what you look for when you get a phone every 2 years, maybe. I don't know what your upgrade cycle's like right now, uh, but it seems to be every 1 to 2 years, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
And what kind of decision making process you go through, and hopefully that will help me a bit because I honestly really didn't get anywhere. Like I end up at a point where I know what I'd want in an ideal world,
Mhm.
but to justify it, I think was hard for me. And it all worked out because I didn't actually need to change my phone. It,
Right.
I actually ended up
For
factory resetting it because it was quite laggy and jittery and crashy.
right.
So I factory reset it and have no widgets on my screen except for one. I have my calendar widget still, but like my
Mhm.
Spotify widget, my Audacity or my Audible widget, my calculator widget, all those types of things are off my home screen now because those ate up quite a bit of memory on
Okay.
like an ongoing basis because I think they kind of
Right.
had to have processes continually running. So the load time and the navigation was a little bit painful when they were there. So I
Yeah.
factory reset it, gave it a bit of a fresh start, and it's been running pretty well so far. So
Right.
no complaints there since I reset it, and it's been charging and discharging fine. So
Yeah.
disaster averted. But I mean, like the time's eventually going to come where I'm going to have to replace my phone. So
Yeah.
I'm still curious about how you specifically decide what type of phone to get on, when your upgrade cycle does come around and kind of what you look for in a device in general.
Yeah. This is yeah. It's always kind of a dilemma for me talking about my next phone because like you said, we're at the point like we're technology enthusiasts, but we also have like we're also realists and like we're adults and we like our technology lifestyle is kind of saturated already. So like I know all the stuff about the new phones that have come out, but I don't feel like my current phone, other than being like as slow as I would expect, given that it's almost 2 years old now, it's as slow, like it's lost some speed, but I don't get any of these show-stopping problems that other people describe. Like I've never had a phone get markedly worse after an update. I know I've had people have those issues, but I've never had any kind of show-stopping bug or loss of functionality due to something that I felt like Apple did. And so the only thing that I think I would want is kind of updated, relatively updated internals. So like I have the iPhone SE right now, which is technically 3-year old hardware now, 2-year old hardware.
2 years sounds right.
It's from the iPhone 6S
Yeah.
generation.
Because the last, not this past time or the last time, it's gone two WWDCs without being upgraded, right?
Right. Yes.
Yeah. Because it was released in that spring event or something.
It was released in the spring event. Yeah, the
Yeah.
same one the iPad Pro came at.
Right. And then that WWDC, they didn't upgrade it. And then this past one, they did upgrade it. So it's gone, say, 18 months
Yeah.
without being touched or looked
Yeah.
at.
Well, and I bought it almost like within a month of getting updated because as soon as I saw it, it's like, this is amazing.
Right.
Or sorry, no, I didn't buy it immediately after. I bought it slightly later on because I still had the iPhone 6. And again, the only reason I ended up getting the SE was because it was cheaper and I liked the idea of having the small thing that still had modern
Yeah.
internals.
Well, because it was updated hardware from what you
Yeah.
had, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you said, it was 6S hardware.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So all I would want is a faster computer, like CPU in it, and a better camera. Those are the only things I wouldn't, if the shape didn't change at all. I love that size. I just want to be able to take better pictures continually, like on a yearly or bi-yearly basis, and not have things over time just get to the point where they're so slow that it takes 5 seconds to wait before an app launches.
Right. But you're not at that point right now.
I'm at that point where I don't know better. I think I'm in the in-between stage. Like it's fine. But if I went and played with a new phone for too long,
Mm-hmm.
I would get spoiled. And like I see
Right.
when I use Julia's phone, I see because she got a new phone, spoiler alert. Um, I can see how much faster it is.
I've noticed my SE is getting, it hangs for like a second or two
Hmm.
at times. And again, it's that aspect of you don't know any better. And
Yeah.
it's still faster than my Android phone
Yeah. Yeah.
ever has been, except for maybe the first day that I
Yeah.
had it. I was like, wow, this thing's snappy. And then like the next week it was like, yep. But again, it's not a conscious thing. You just get used
Exactly.
to how your phone's being. But until you use like the newest phone,
Hmm.
your eyes are in the shadow of lag. I want to clarify for myself because you're talking about phones getting slow and noticeably worse over time.
Hmm.
Are you saying that in the context of an iOS user or in general?
I think you usually hear it more with iOS users. There are a couple of reasons for that, which I mean we can get into. I feel like so iOS gets there's a huge divide between iOS and Android users. I like both operating systems. I prefer iOS for personal reasons, like having tried both to an extent. And so iOS gets updates a lot further, even I would say on average than kind of Google blessed devices do, like the Pixel and well, the Pixel hasn't, none of them
Right.
have gone out of support yet. Um, but longer than Nexus devices did. Like they got updates on like the iPhone 4 or whatever it was got updates for 5 years or something after it was released, and it always got the update on the same day that the very newest iPhone did. So like
Right.
software updates were not a reason to upgrade, and but people took them over time as being reasons to upgrade because people would perceive that, oh, Apple's slowing down my phone when they release an update, like they're doing things to slow down the phone, but it's much more of a consequence of there being more stuff in the operating system.
Mhm.
And I think like you can call that forced obsolescence if you want, which is the term for making something intentionally worse or obsolete over time. You can call it that if you want, but that the intention is to make it more powerful, more useful at the like expense of computational speed.
It's more like the hardware manufacturers are wanting to continue to move forward and
Yeah.
innovate
Yeah.
and advance. So the software developers at Apple are trying to take advantage of the capabilities of the new
Of the newer
hardware,
thing. Yeah.
right? So if you're going to blame anyone, blame the hardware manufacturers because they're the ones coming out with the new hardware. If they made their hardware just run cooler, but I guess even then, if they
Even
ran
then.
cooler, you could push it harder, right? So
Mm.
I think either way, as long as technology advancement is a thing,
Yeah.
and just hardware manufacturers are just okay not coming up with anything new, then you're always going to have older devices not be able to keep up with the newer software at some point.
Hmm.
It's not a given on a year-to-year basis, but eventually, and that's the whole reason why older software stops being supported, because the developers don't want to try to have to keep in mind the older hardware and saying,
Yeah.
well, we have to design our app to, this many operations per second because the older software or the older hardware can't keep up with it.
Right.
It's like, well, at some point it's like, well, they're just not going to get that update, or if they do,
Mhm.
it's just going to run worse.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because developers and software makers and hardware makers are all kind of at a loss either way. There's no way to win that. And I'll give you an example of something that I actually encountered as a developer in trying to program for new devices like PCs and old PCs at the same time. I forget if I told you this, um, but I put a toggle in one of my programs that it was using Acrobat to process PDFs. And I had to, or I guess I didn't have to, but I decided to put a toggle in because if Acrobat didn't get enough memory or couldn't process fast enough, the macro would just crash. More specifically, Acrobat would crash, and then it would drag the macro down. Like the macro would keep trying to chew through, and Acrobat would be gone, and so it would just fail. And so I put a toggle in my macro that would. It was called a slow computer toggle, and you could
Hmm.
set it if your computer kept crashing, if Acrobat kept crashing, and you had a slow computer, you could set it. The default was fast, but you could set your computer to slow, and all it did was build in longer delays between each step so that the processor would have time to catch up, to keep up. And it did work. Like when I used it on a slower computer, that was the difference. Like I made the delay like 3 times longer when it was waiting to do something. Instead of waiting like zero point 0.1 to zero point 0.2 seconds, I would wait like 0.75 seconds or a second. And that was the difference. And so from the users of the slow computers perspective, they are getting a worse program. Like that seems like forced obsolescence, but it's really just like your computer can't keep up with this program. And so I'm going to make this concession. And the only way I can actually make this still run at all is to make it run much slower.
Right. But they're not also experiencing that delay in every operation as they're using it, just
Not
for
every
that one
operation, just that one
procedure.
part. Yeah.
Right. Whereas if we're coming back to the example of the phone, a lot of the time that type of performance decrease is seen in every operation.
Right.
Once you have an operating
Mhm.
system that's beyond the
Yeah.
capabilities for hardware,
Mhm.
it's like everything gets worse, not just one thing that you have to do
Well, yeah.
whenever,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
I have a similar situation, I guess, with uh, the app that I'm making, and it's not as severe as that, but it's like the people that are going to be using this document, they're on like usually 15 or 17-inch laptops,
Okay.
and I'm designing it on my 23-inch screen
Yeah.
at work. So when I'm setting like font sizes and uh, just
Yeah. Yeah.
zoom levels and that kind of stuff, it's all in the context of using it on a 23-inch screen. But when I get, because we have like prior versions of the of the application that are being used right now, and I get them back from the people using it, and they're zoomed in to like 150%,
Yeah.
right? Because they're on the smaller screen. So I'm like, I wonder if there's a way to like detect what size the screen is, or
Yeah.
just kind of have like, I guess, the same kind of toggle that you're talking about, where like you can say, okay, I'm on a laptop screen, and then
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
it changes the zoom level or whatever based on that. But I don't know, I think that's kind of taking it a bit too far. I have other stuff to worry about.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
it's the same kind of consideration, right? Like different types of hardware that people are using, and that's even aside from the software aspect, where
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
like you're,
Exactly.
you're talking about, this requires a certain number of like threads or whatever, and it's
Yeah.
like ideally
Yeah.
these people have like semi recent computers, but
Actually, that reminds me of like talking about physical limitations or physical constraints on like a virtual program. I have a macro that does a mail merge automatically and names files not just based on um, not just based on information in the file itself, but based on information from from the database that you're mail merging from. And one of the things that I discovered as I was trying to do a mail merge on Friday using it is that I couldn't figure out for the life of me why I had a document and it did the mail merge. And then I went and looked at the new document and it was longer. The original document I had was one page. It all fit on one page. And when I did the mail merge, suddenly it didn't fit on a page anymore. And I was like, what is happening? Why are the criteria different? Why doesn't it fit on the page anymore? And I was looking through every aspect and I was like, this is like, what's different? I don't understand. And like after half an hour of looking through all these different potential things and looking in the code, trying to see if figure out if there's something like made the font bigger, made spacing bigger. It turns out that it was just opening a new document as default, and the mail merge letter I was using was legal size, and it was mail merging to a letter size because it was just saying open new document.
right.
And so now I realize that I can't make that assumption about what size the paper is going to be that it wants the document to be. So for this one instance, like I fixed that bug by just making the document look up how big what size the paper is, and
Mhm.
then making the new document at the time of when it is about to go save it, it just changes the size of the paper to be whatever the original document was. But that only fixes that for one aspect of this document. It doesn't inherit any of the properties of the old document unless I explicitly specify them, because it's just saying open new document.
Mhm.
And it's like you're making that assumption, but if that assumption goes wrong, you end up with a problem like I faced, where I'm just like, why is this the way that it is? Because you'd expect it when you're copying and pasting an entire document in, you don't think about the size of the paper. And yeah, so in the end, that's what I ended up doing is I put in, like, it literally took one line. I was like, set size of new document
Right.
page to the same size as the old document page. And that fixed it. But it was a very bizarre kind of like, oh, this is a real world thing that otherwise I wouldn't have seen, because on the internet there are no pages. Like on online, you don't expect to have pages of anything. You just, like, I expected to have a document, but in the real world, in the physical world, paper can only be so big. Eventually you'll fall off it.
Right. Yeah, like I can only imagine what it's like being an Android developer,
Hmm.
where there's so many different types and sizes of devices, uh, like different types of performance, all that kind of stuff, and you have to make decisions about what things to support
Hmm.
and what things to consider when you're designing your app. And just there's some that you're like, well, that's just how it is. Like you can't really design for that,
Yeah.
right? Um, like you have the iOS people frustrated by or dreading having to design for the iPhone 10.
Hmm.
And it's like, at least that's just one type of device with
Yeah.
one type of quirk that you need to consider. Like,
Yep.
can you imagine just like, yeah, like any other one? And then you have the aspect of just the like Samsung versus HTC, like they might have different ways of handling processes that you have to design
Right.
for. Like
Yeah.
ideally, they're all adhering to like the standard Android SDKs.
Yeah.
But is SDK the right term?
I think, I mean, it's fine.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
whatever standards they have or guidelines they have for
Like
designing
it's software
apps.
development kit. That's usually a set of guidelines and
Yeah,
APIs and tools and stuff.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I think they're semi all standard, but there's probably
Mhm.
still quirks with each type of device and
Yeah.
how they handle different
Yeah.
things and prioritize things, right? So I don't know. It's I don't envy them for having to try to do that, and I can totally see why people will just choose to not develop for Android,
Mhm.
or they'll prioritize just like the flagship Samsung phones and
Exactly. Yeah.
the Google phones and everything else. If they work, they work. If they don't, then
Yeah.
too bad.
Well, it's funny because the trend has been away from small phones, and like I can't think of the last time an Android phone was released. Like there are probably niche ones that are still coming out, but
Yeah,
like the last time an Android phone was released, you hear about that was 4 inches or less. Like that's just not a
yeah.
thing anymore.
Even 5 inch ones, like you
Yeah,
don't like they're all at
it's
least five and
rare.
a half, if not
Hmm.
5.7 or 5.9.
And so for me, I really like, I've mentioned before, if I want a big thing, I'll use an iPad or another, like a tablet or maybe a laptop, depending on my needs. But if I'm on the go, I want the tiniest possible thing. And so the only option there is the iPhone SE right now. Like that's the most modern thing. And we can talk a bit. There was a rumor that they talked about an upgrade um, about a new, which I didn't actually read about. Again, like I've stopped reading RSS, so I'm falling behind on some news, but I still hear it through podcasts. They're potentially releasing a new updated 4-inch phone
Oh, nice.
in Q1 of 2018.
Okay.
So probably around the spring. And I'm very excited for that.
What's the rumor based on?
In there was a report
Sources.
out of India, which is where it's very popular and where I think they might be manufacturing them. Yeah, so I that might be my next, even if it looks exactly the same as the current SE, if it has a new camera, like they're cheaper. The iPhone SE is cheaper than any other smartphone you can get,
Oh,
other
for
than like
sure.
maybe the OnePlus.
Yeah.
And I
Again,
don't
with
know, it's really like it.
2-year-old hardware, but still,
Yeah, I mean,
performance wise, is probably similar to what you'd get with a
right.
current Android phone.
Yeah. If it follows the same pattern as the SE did, what we would get is in the spring, we would get the iPhone SE updated with iPhone 8 hardware. That was what happened 2 years ago.
That would be the SE10, right?
Is that what
Is
they would
that?
call it?
I don't know. I'm asking you. That seems like a good enough name. It'd be in line.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think they would do that. That would be hilarious, but I don't think they would because, as you know, Apple cannot write 1010.
No.
They would have to make it with an X. Yeah, that's in terms of, again, another spoiler alert, in terms of 2718 smartphones, if that was released, that's the one I would buy. And considering I'm not in the market for a smartphone now, um, that is the next thing that I would potentially be looking at. One thing that occurred to me, realizing that because I spent some time buying Julia's phone in well, specifically a Fido store, but in a phone store, is you have the Note 4 right now.
Yeah.
You can get a phone that's probably at least 2 years, maybe 3 years newer from Samsung for $0 if you just re-up your contract.
I considered that as a possibility when I was looking at phones because a even like a $200 or $400 phone that would otherwise be like 1,000
Hmm.
is pretty appealing. There were some. You said you were on the Fido store, I think,
Yep.
because yeah, I'd gone
Yep.
into the Fido store and yeah, they have the. I think it was the S8, and it was normally $200. It was zero when
Yeah.
you
Which is
signed to
crazy.
yeah, when you signed to your contract. It's like wow, that's pretty good. So I was going to like crunch the numbers to see like the current plans and the cost of the phone on the per year uh, or per month cost
Yeah.
of keeping my current plan and buying a new phone outright versus getting a free or subsidized phone and then a new plan because I think the biggest issue for me would be having to worry about how much data I'm using every month.
Yeah.
And it's such a huge quality of life improvement. I don't know if
Mhm.
it's improvement if you already have it. Quality of life element to
Yeah.
not have to worry about that. I
Yeah.
just
So
I can't imagine having to worry about like being on Wi-Fi or like, oh, I only have a gigabyte left this month. Like I'd go crazy.
to be specific, I'm not suggesting you re-up your plan with a new plan to get the phone at the full cash discount. But the last time I re-signed my plan, which now was like 3 or 4 years ago, um, they contacted me and said, we can update you to get you a Nexus 5 if you upgrade your plan and it'll be $0. And I said, no, I don't want to change my plan, but I wouldn't mind re-signing for new to your plan. What can you do for me? At which point I was able to negotiate something like $150, maybe even more. No, yeah, because it started off, they have like the base subsidy and they were able to offer me $150 more off that. So it ended up being like $150 for the Nexus 5 total. And that was at a time when it was probably 4 or 500. No, because the Nexus 5 was the
No,
last one that was originally 300, right?
I think it was about
350?
four.
Okay.
The Nexus 4 was around 300 ish,
Hmm.
and the 4 or the 5 was a little bit more.
So it was, yeah, it was in that ballpark. It was around $150 after subsidies and stuff. So it was maybe probably a little more than half, 50% off. Um, that's what I'm recommending. I don't think you should ever. When I went into the Fido store, like we added Julia's line as a second line on my account, and the guy was like, "Don't ever let anyone take this from you." It's like, "Don't worry, I won't."
Yeah. The times where people have checked our plans,
Mhm.
you either get a what you don't have data, and
Yeah,
it's like we do.
no, we do.
And then you start like explaining to them, and then we've even had people that are like, "Oh, I'll buy your plan off you."
Yeah, oh, I
It's like,
know.
no.
No. So, well, it's funny because the guy we were talking to, I don't think he was a student, so I don't think he was necessarily brand new, but he hadn't been there for that long. But he was like, "Oh, I've never heard. I don't even think my manager's ever heard of this." It's like it's so far removed. It's like you just can't
Yeah.
ever give it up.
Well, in the Fido app, when you go into like account details and you look at your data limits and stuff, like it says right there unlimited.
Yeah.
I think before it just said
Before it said
nothing.
zero.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
just so they've obviously acknowledged it as being like a thing that is possible to have,
Yeah.
but I don't know. Coming back to what we were talking about, so you you said that the new SE, assuming it had an updated camera, which there's no reason why it
Which
wouldn't,
it, yeah.
right? So it would have the updated camera because to get the no the depth of field thing that needs two no it uses infrared for that, right? So it doesn't need two
The
cameras,
front facing one needs the depth part is, yeah, with extra sensors
right? But not
now.
two cameras.
No,
The, the camera plus the sensor. So
which
it could in theory have
really
that,
it's a visible
right?
light sensor and an infrared sensor. So really two
It's
sensors, but
effectively a camera, yeah.
yeah,
Uh,
it's literally a camera.
an
Yeah.
infrared camera instead of visible light.
Mm.
But yeah, so I think I'm kind of in the same position you are with what I would want in a new phone.
Yeah.
Would be like a good camera and one that doesn't cause me grief when I try to navigate around it.
Sure.
And I think that gives me a fair amount of options. I think then the other consideration is how it works with my smartwatch.
Great.
And I know like Fido, they have a 15-day, at least this is what I was told in store. They have a 15-day return policy for any new phone that you buy, and then it has to have like less than 30 minutes of
Of
airtime
talk. Yeah.
of talk, yeah, which
Which is
isn't an issue.
so
I don't
honestly
think
it's
I.
such a dumb thing. How would you even check?
Well, no, your account would show.
I mean, it's okay. So I guess it on your like if you're actually calling,
Right.
but as a person who had, I don't think I've used 30 minutes in the last year. I make phone. I talk
Yeah.
like I'm talking to you right now. I just don't use
Well,
the phone.
no, like anyone could just use like a Hangouts dialer
Exactly.
equivalent
Yeah. I
and
was.
not have literally have zero airtime.
Yeah. No, when I first thought it, I was thinking with the newest version of iOS, if you make a Facebook Messenger call or a Hangouts call, it actually shows up in your phone app as an outgoing call and the app
Oh,
that you used. So I was thinking, oh, like it would be visible in there, but how would they check if like if you reset the phone, they would have no way of knowing. But we're talking about specific airtime that you'd see like through the carrier anyways, which is would be untraceable.
yeah, it would have to be. Yeah, it would have to be on their side, and they just see it as
Yeah,
data. They wouldn't
yeah,
see it as airtime. So anyway, I my thought was if I was to get a new phone, I'd bring it home, try it with my watch, and go through all the testing to see
yeah.
what the watch does. Because I looked up online to see different people that used the watch with non-Samsung phones. Like I wanted to see how it worked with the OnePlus One um
Right.
3T, is it? Is that the new
That's the
one?
older one. There's now
Is
the
that the old one?
5T.
Are they on 5T now? Oh
I
jeez.
think they skipped 4.
Okay. Because like we didn't talk about the 3T that long ago. So okay, maybe they skipped 4.
Yeah.
Uh but just to see how it worked with the OnePlus phones. And people had kind of mixed reviews of how it behaved.
Right.
But I just wouldn't want to take that chance of getting it. And then even if it worked at first, then just to lose that functionality. Like
Right.
I had bought a smartwatch for Maria last year, and I first got her like a Fossil Android
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
smartwatch that uses its own like app to connect with the watch, and it was just a nightmare keeping it connected and configuring it. Like it was just really bad.
Okay.
Just constant disconnects. And like when I disconnected, the watch wouldn't actively reconnect. So you had to go into your phone. Like you could only pair it the one way. The
Right.
watch wouldn't make an effort to pair back the other way.
Mhm.
So if it disconnected, you had to go back into your phone. You had to notice it was disconnected and be like, I'm not getting any vibrations. What the heck? And then
Right.
it's reconnected through the app. Whereas with the Gear S2 and the S, presumably, when it disconnects, the watch is looking for the Bluetooth connection of the phone and it will just pair itself back.
Right.
You don't have to have the phone do the work. So even if it disconnects, it will just immediately reconnect once it's able to.
Yeah.
Whereas other watches aren't able to do that.
Right.
So I wouldn't want to be in that same position if I didn't have the Samsung phone, because the Samsung watch uses like the Gear app on the phone. And there's just that level of consistency when it's like the
Right.
Samsung app, the Samsung phone, the Samsung watch,
Yeah.
and they're all able to be designed and work together. Whereas if it's not the Samsung phone, there isn't that same level of guarantee. Not saying that it wouldn't work,
Mhm.
but there's the risk that you're taking by
Sure.
not going to Samsung phone.
And this would be even like we're talking about staying within Android. If you tried to pair the Samsung Watch with your iPhone, it just there's not even a reason to try. Like it's just not what you're looking for.
I think apparently, again, it does work to some extent,
Mhm.
but I think that'd be even worse
Yeah.
because the whole the whole thing is different. Like the
Yeah.
notification system is different. Like
Yeah.
actually, I don't even know if the S2 is able to. Like I know they're talking about the S3 that are
Okay.
supposed to have iOS functionality, but I can't recall if the S2
Hmm.
already does or is planning on being capable to pair with iOS.
Right. Well, that's too bad.
Yeah. But yeah, I think as long as my next phone has like a decent camera, because that's what I use my phone for if I'm
Yeah.
not using it for phone stuff. And screen size wise, I think I'd still want at least a 5-inch phone, and that's like a bare minimum, just
Yeah.
because I find the bigger screen is really nice for being able to read on my phone, because I don't normally use like any sort of tablet or that kind of thing at home.
Yeah.
If I'm just chilling, I'll be
Mhm.
using my phone. Not to say that I couldn't use like the tablet thing that I have, but that's more of a PC that the keyboard can detach from. So it's not the same kind of experience
Right.
as using a dedicated tablet,
Mhm.
which is unfortunate because I think Windows used to have a better or nicer tablet operating system. Like, because wasn't it RT
Yeah.
that was like the tablet operating system?
Yeah.
And then they switched to Windows 10, which is like the hybrid.
Well, now there's a separate version of Windows 10 that's specifically low powered again, like
Right.
RT was, but I don't think it's really on many devices. Like all the Surface Pro stuff doesn't use it.
Okay.
They use full.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like mine's fully Windows 10, but the operating system still recognizes the device as a tablet.
Right.
But it's still, as far as I can tell, like a full version of Windows 10
Mhm.
Home or Standard or whatever. But it just doesn't behave the way a tablet does. It behaves as a neutered laptop,
Right.
which isn't great.
Yeah.
Like it's fine if I'm just browsing and reading, but it's not a super enjoyable experience because it gets you to interact with the screen the same way you would as if it were a computer.
Right.
It's a touchscreen, so you can tap on the icons and the start menu and all that kind of stuff, but it's just not the way a tablet, at least the way I feel a tablet should be.
Right. Huh.
But that's why I'd want my phone to be able to fill that role of like media consumption while at home or
Yeah.
content
Yeah.
consumption while at home. And that's why I like the bigger screen since moving from the Nexus 4 to the Note 4.
The I just looked it up. The Windows 10, it's called Windows 10S is the new version.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
The
We
one
talked
they
about that one.
probably it's the one they
Yeah.
introduced. So they do have a Surface laptop that's just called Surface Laptop that uses it. And I believe the thing with Windows 10S is that it only uses apps from the Windows Store, the
Yeah.
Microsoft Store.
Yeah. No, and that was the context where I think with Future Chat we talked about it.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's supposed to kind of be built more around the model of you use your laptop or your device in a very narrow use case type thing where you'd only need apps from the Windows App Store.
Hmm.
So like somewhat like the same way you'd use like an iPad or an Android tablet, like basically just content consumption, but you're not trying to do any sort of like video or photo editing. But again, even then there's apps on the Windows App Store that I'm sure can do that.
Yeah.
It's just you're a lot more limited in what you can do.
Yeah. What this reminded me of, uh, so one of the things that they announced at where they announced Windows 10S, they said, okay, we're announcing this laptop and here's this new light version of the operating system that can only get apps from the Microsoft Store. Windows Store, Microsoft Store. I guess they rebranded it.
Microsoft Store, I think it's now.
Well, this says Windows Store, and
What
this
does
says
mine
Microsoft
say?
Store. That's so confusing. Anyways,
Mine says
uh,
Microsoft Store.
yeah, so does mine. Um, anyways, I'll put a link here that specifically has like an icon and a thing for Windows Store. But it says one of the things they announced was that iTunes was going to be coming to that store that has two names, and it says here it's going to be coming by the end of the year, which is the year 2017, which is almost up. We still haven't seen anything from it, so I'm very curious if that's still coming. Uh, but yeah, the whole thing, the idea of underpowering a version of your operating system that looks the same as your regular operating system is just confusing to customers and is going to lead to people being frustrated, not knowing what they're getting. And that's what's happening. And you said yours is not it's not Windows RT, it's not this S, it's a full version of
Yeah, it's
Windows.
full Windows 10. Like it seems to function the same way. Like it's a smaller device, so it's understandably a bit slower with some stuff.
Right.
Like when it boots up, it has to load the same way a PC does, and you already know how PCs can boot up
Wait,
sometimes. So
actually,
what do you mean? Actually,
because
what?
mine, like you say that like ha 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 derisive laugh, but like my computer boots up super quickly. Like it's
Well,
almost instant.
no, I know, but I mean like the startup processes once you've logged in and it's kind of woken up. I'm not saying the actual boot to the login screen.
Okay.
I mean like the
Once it's
login
logged in.
till it's ready to go screen
Right. Okay.
or just state, I guess, right? Like I don't know, that's the thing that annoys me so much with Windows is like they have so many startup processes or can have so many startup processes that just like my work computer is getting that way now
Okay.
where I like log in and it takes a good like 3 to 5 minutes before it's kind of ready to go. And the task manager doesn't show like 90% CPU usage. But
Yeah, that's pretty sad.
yeah,
Huh.
yeah. The good thing is that I am able, if I wanted to upgrade the RAM in the tablet laptop hybrid thing that I have.
Okay.
I haven't gotten around to doing that, but it's probably worth doing it just
Right.
so it's kind of at peak performance, as
Yeah,
good as
yeah.
it will ever get. But again, like I really only use that tablet to remotely log into work when I'm not
Okay.
at home.
And
And
you don't find that annoying
what's that?
logging in on this like little bad tablet laptop thing?
Well, it's not bad. Like it's fine.
Like you wouldn't do any development work on that. You
Oh,
wouldn't
of
work
course I
on your app.
wouldn't. No, no, it's more like, hey, someone needs an email, so I'll log into work and send it from my Outlook kind of thing, and like
Hmm.
send an attachment that's on the network, or I'll do like a quick thing, like the actual real part of my job, not the side development part of my
Right.
job.
Yeah.
And so I do that part from there, but no, I wouldn't do any extended work
Right.
from there unless I hooked it up to like a monitor.
Right. That's the thing. Like I don't do any quote unquote work. Like I wouldn't do any development on my like remote desktop into my work computer, work virtual like VM through Citrix. I wouldn't do any work through that on my iPad. But if I
Right.
needed to send an email, I would just log like I just have Exchange set up, on Outlook for iOS, and I would just send an email through there. Like
No,
that's the
no,
nice thing
I
about
have the same
ours.
thing, but you still have
Right.
to do like attachments if someone needs something off the
Yeah,
network.
yeah, yeah.
Right.
I get that. Yeah. I one of the things I do to combat having to send like we've talked about sending attachments as being its own thing where you don't want to send an attachment, you want to send a link and then they can go and open the link and go straight to the thing. Uh I've gone out of my way to like so in our team's OneNote, I just have a bunch of links, like all of these documents rather than having them spread across the network and like just having to rely on either memory or kind of forced repetition of going and finding where they all are. I just put them all in one spot, like organized by what they are. And just like we just share the links there. So in often cases, we won't even need to, in an email, we wouldn't need to say, here's the link. We'd say, oh yeah, that's on this page in the OneNote. And then they would just be able to go and find it themselves.
Mm,
It's quite handy and don't have to email attachments, but otherwise that would be the thing you'd have to do.
yeah. Well, I made some progress at work with the cloud storage file sharing stuff
Mhm.
because one guy, I was like, oh yeah, it's on the Dropbox. So he's like, oh, do we have to like, because we were sending a file to someone. So I was like, well, I'll just send them the Dropbox. And then he's like, oh, do we have to send them like the password too? And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, oh, so they can log in and get it. I'm like,
Mhm.
oh no, you just like share the link. Like you just go in and get the link and send it to them. And then once they open the link, they'll have the ability to download the file from there. Like he thought that you had to log in to the Dropbox account that the file's on to
Right.
go in to download it. Right.
Yeah.
But I think it started like fill in that part of the picture of like the benefit of the cloud sharing,
Right.
where like you could upload stuff to your own Dropbox and just share that single link
Right.
with someone for them to be able to read or download the thing
Yeah.
without having to share your account info because that'd be crazy. But
Mhm.
I guess that the benefit of that was kind of like missing without that aspect of just being able to send a link
Yeah. Yeah.
to get for a file, right?
Mhm.
But yeah, no, I hope that's a sign of things to come for just people in general, like just getting more
Yeah.
comfortable
Yeah.
using like file sharing like that.
Yeah. The thing that blew someone's mind that I was talking to recently, he asked, or he was sending me a document, and it was like 30 megabytes or something. He's like, I can't send it through email. My email won't process a file that big. And I said, oh, just send it to me via Dropbox. And he was like, oh, I don't know. I don't have an account. I don't know how to do that. And the only feature that the only thing I've used Dropbox for in the last year is setting up one of those Dropbox boxes. Like it's a link where someone can go visit this website and upload a file to your Dropbox.
Okay,
Like you can
I've heard of
accept.
that before. Yeah.
Yeah, it worked very well. And he
Okay.
immediately was like, okay, it's done. And I was like, that worked amazingly. And now, like, it removes a virtualization or a layer of kind of, yeah, difficulty for somebody who's kind of not more novice at sharing files. Like, you and I wouldn't need that because we
Mhm.
would just be able to share a link and, like, I would download it and it'd be fine. But if someone's like, I don't know how to do this and it's too big to send via email, also, who would ever want to send a big file via email, even if you could? Um, this is just so much better. Like you just send them a link and they click on the thing and it says like you can drop a file here and it just there's an upload button and you put your file there.
Oh, so you're saying for that you don't even need the other person to have an account?
No, they
Oh,
just they
okay.
can
Hmm.
anyone who has that link can just drop something in there.
Okay. I thought it was like Dropbox to Dropbox user, and you
No.
can like in similar like a shared folder kind of thing. But I guess that's how teachers
Yes,
would use
exactly.
that sort
Yeah.
of thing, right?
Yeah.
Like accepting assignments. Huh.
But that was yeah, that was pretty great.
Yeah. And the other day I'd shared a file with someone, like it was just a Google Sheets, and I sent them. I was like, okay, here's like it was like a list of whatever. And then
Mhm.
I updated the list, and I was like, hey, I don't have to send it back out because they already have the link for it. So the next time they go on there, it'll be updated.
Yeah. And then they never do that. And then they email you again and say, "Hey, did you have you ever updated that list? Can you send it back to me?" You'd be like, "Ah." Because I've done that before, and I can tell you it's very frustrating.
Because they lost the link to the file, or they think you need to
No, they just,
resend.
yeah, they think if you updated the file, they
Oh,
need to have a new
right.
link to it
That
or a
part's
new
not
version of it.
that part's not entirely intuitive though.
It's
Like
not
if you're not
intuitive,
familiar with the concept already.
but if you have wrapped your head around it, you want it to be intuitive so badly.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had someone at work, she was reviewing a document that I had written and there was a version of it that we had made for kind of internal consideration and then we took that version and like narrowed it down and smushed it up to be a public facing version and then we sent it to her for kind of final approval of the public version and it turned out she had like missed that they were different links and different documents so she was kind of reviewing the original document that was much longer and like had all kinds of details we wouldn't have put in the public one. She was like, I don't know about this guy. Like, I feel like it's not done yet. And then it came out that she was looking at the old links. She was like, okay, I see
So
what's
isn't that
happening.
your guys' fault for not just updating the original one?
No, well,
Yes.
no, it's probably our fault for not making it clear. Like we wanted both documents to exist side by
But you
side.
can do that. I don't know, maybe if it was this Dropbox or Drive.
Neither.
Oh.
This was our enterprise system.
Oh, okay. No, because I was gonna say Drive has like the versioning
Mhm.
feature where you can re-upload a
Yeah.
file,
This
and
has
if there's one that's
versioning.
existing, oh,
We
so why didn't you
wanted
just make it a
both
different version? But
because
can't
we
you flip
wanted
back? You can flip back to an old version, can't you?
you can flip, but we wanted both to exist side by side. We wanted there to be the document and then the public version of the document that
That's
was
not a good
different.
idea. It's a recipe for disaster.
I don't think so because we
Have
wanted
someone
both.
send out the wrong one because they're both there.
We
That's
made
not
it clear which was which.
good.
I knew which was which. Actually, our entire team knew which was which, so it didn't ever affect anyone except in this one instance.
Isn't there something like someone who hasn't had something gone wrong is like an accident waiting to happen or something like that?
I don't think that's a phrase, but I understand what you're saying.
It's like, oh, that hasn't happened. We're fine. It's like, yet.
Yeah, that's true of almost anything, though.
It is true.
I don't
Always
think
be
it's a reason
scared.
to worry.
I think it is.
Did you say always be scared?
It's like always be careful.
Okay.
Abs.
Uh, so the one thing I have a mini topic here that I put at the top of notes, and it's more just like like a nitpicky thing. If this was Hello Internet, it would be a paper cut.
Okay.
Do
This
you,
this is a gear grinding.
yeah,
We'll
do you
we'll
feel
put
like we can
the
wrap up the
media
show
there.
with this then?
Sure.
Okay. So I'm gonna describe this because all I wrote in here is mini topic things without dates online. And if you're not already frustrated, then you just once you hear what I'm actually referring to, you will be.
We'll
I'm
see.
sure. I hope. So sometimes, every once in a while, I will come across a thing on the internet. And because the internet is kind of timeless, like as much as like Twitter and stuff has breaking news, most of the internet is timeless. Once you put something up, it's up. And unless it's like a Space Jam website, you have no idea how long it's been there for. So the answer to that in most cases is to like when you put up a news story or a piece of something, you put a date alongside it, or like the CMS you use has a date inserted. So you can at least know, is this piece of content 10 years old or was it written yesterday? And so first, like the original thing is the things without dates anywhere on the page or anywhere on the thing are super annoying. So like Twitter doesn't have that problem because every tweet is timestamped super obviously. If something doesn't have a date, it's bad enough. But unequivocally, the worst thing I can think of on the internet when it comes to just kind of formatting and this kind of issue is things that don't have dates, but in the actual text of the thing, it refers to like a relative time. So like the phrase a few weeks ago on a page that doesn't have a date. How do you know? Like you can't, first of all, put a date, but second of all, if you're not going to put a date, don't use relative references to time. If I say, "Oh, this movie was released a few weeks ago" on my movie review, but I don't know when the movie came out, like how is it useful to me? That's a bad example because movies have usually have defined end dates. Um, but like say there was, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a good example, but there's a news story that somebody who's been in the public sphere, let's pick someone non-controversial like Hillary Clinton, did something, and
So
you don't
non-controversial.
exactly, you don't have there's no date on the story, but it says like, oh, a few weeks earlier, it was found that she had done this,
That sounds like an
and
article.
that seems like
I think I've read that article
yeah,
before.
I've read that article multiple times, but because of the way things change, especially in places on the internet, or like new facts can come to light and you're like you don't understand, you can't put things into context because the thing you have doesn't have it doesn't have a date on it, but in on the page they are using a relative, like do you understand what I'm trying to get at and how frustrating it is?
Kind of. I still fail to see an actual example. I'm not sure. Like I know what you mean, but I don't think I've come across that situation. Like I've had that feeling of when was this written? Like because they'll say something
Mhm.
about whatever.
Mhm.
Like when was this written? And then I'll go up to the byline and there's usually a date there.
Right, so if there
Right.
wasn't one,
But
wouldn't that
that's
be
the thing.
frustrating?
But I've never come across that where there wasn't one. So I
Interesting.
don't have that feeling. Have you recently come across that?
I have come across it, and I'm not going to disclose where I came across it, but I can assure you that I have. And I will tell you about it after we finish recording. And if you agree that I should disclose it, then I will disclose it. And it will be in the show notes. And I will either have a line in the show notes that says, Mike agrees I should not disclose this, or there will be a link to it.
Okay.
But if you ever come across, like this isn't the only the thing that's open in front of me right now is is an example of this, but I have seen other examples of it where I scroll up or I scroll down, like I look at the entire page and there's no date on it, and I'm like, this says a few weeks ago. How old is, like, is this, does this even exist anymore?
Hmm.
or is it so new that it's not like if you go to search for a thing because of this kind of non-date reference problem, is it that the entire thing has closed down, or is it that it's still so new because it was only a few weeks ago that it just hasn't made its way onto the internet yet?
Hmm.
This is a similar issue, and this issue presents itself in this piece of material as well, that there's no hyperlinks out to more information. There's just text.
I think the risk I see with stuff that doesn't have a date is that it gets like spread around
Hmm.
and people read it and take it as fact or whatever relevant info
Hmm.
when, like you alluded to before, new facts may have risen,
Yeah,
so it's not current anymore.
right.
But there's nothing to indicate, oh, that's from 5 years ago.
Mm.
Like they've found stuff out since then.
Right.
But again, like I haven't really
So, okay, how about
seen
this?
too many that are like that.
This might be a good example. It might not be. So I see examples of this that might be similar on Reddit a lot, where you'll see memes or something that's come up, and it's clear to you because you saw it 5 years ago that this is not a new thing and it's already been discussed at length. But someone posts it to Reddit, and people are like, "Oh my God, this is outrageous," or "This is so great," or whatever, like whatever opinion they have on it, and you're like, this is so old, like it's already been debunked, or this is already like we know the earth is round, like it's there's all these.
But again, I see those things, but then there's a date that says like May 2017 next to it,
Well, okay, so it was
right?
posted on May
Like
2017, but
Nick's done that before. He'll post stuff in the topics and be like, "This is literally from 6 months ago," right? Which is fine. Like you just came across it as cool, but
right,
it's not
but
like news.
yeah, but if it's like that's why I said like memes specifically, like if something is posted without any kind of
Why do I care
link
if a
out.
meme is old or not?
I'm not using meme in like the image macro sense. I'm using meme in like like knowyourmeme.com covers things. Like if someone posted, I don't know, like back when the WhatsApp was a thing, if a year after that came out, someone posted that meme on Reddit, everyone would be like, "Oh,
People
that's
would probably
super
love
old."
that because
But there's
okay,
no date on
okay.
it.
Here's an example.
Hmm.
You remember back when the OC was big, and they're like, "What you
Yeah.
say?" Like there's
Dear
that whole
sister.
thing that the
Yeah.
Lonely Island did, right?
Yeah.
That was posted somewhere. I don't even remember where it was. I think it was like Twitter. I think it was Twitter. That's what it was. So Twitter, someone reposted this thing. So the tweet itself was current, but they reposted that video or the GIF, or I think it was the video of it. And just I'm like, oh, blah 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 blah. And then people were like, oh, this is so funny. And then the other people, of course, were like, oh, this is like super old.
Yeah.
But it's like, why would you care?
Hmm.
Like that type of thing. Like if someone hasn't seen it before, that's fine. And like you don't
Right.
really care how old it is, right? But you're saying that you wish someone had some sort of disclaimer saying, "P.S. This is from like 10 years ago."
No, I'm not. I'm just if something doesn't have a date on it, I just feel like I'm trying to, I guess, say the act like actually get the words out as to why this is so annoying to me. But it's mostly that it leaves me with no sense of context for whether I should be excited about it or whether the excitement that I have is wasted.
Okay, so again, I've had that same experience. Well, I'll read something on like, say, the Boring Company. Okay,
Yeah.
and be like, oh, there's news about it. I remember reading about this. What else is? Oh, this is the same thing from like 8 months ago,
Yeah.
right? Which again is fine. Like, but
Mhm.
usually, and I'd say 100% of the time I've encountered it, there's a date there indicating, oh, this is old, but
Right.
the date's there. I agree. If the date wasn't there, it's like, is this new news? Is this the same news? But the date's always been there every time I've come across those types of
Mhm.
things.
See, and that's why this is, I think, probably more difficult for you to get on board with because you're the example, like most 99% of the examples you find of this, there's a date there. So it's totally clear. Like if there's an article and someone says a few weeks ago, blah 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 blah, you're like, oh, that's exciting. And then you scroll and check the date and you're like, oh, that was 6 months ago. So they said a few weeks ago, but this is actually all old.
Right.
Whereas
But
if there was no date, it'd be super frustrating because you'd be like, what is this new? And you have to go and do more research to figure
I
out.
would say that I'm confident saying 100% of the time where I've looked for a date, there's been a date.
Wow.
Not saying at everyone I've read there's been a date, but the times where I've cared enough to check if there's a date, there's been a date. So
Well,
I literally cannot empathize with this feeling of frustration.
once we stop recording, you're about to have your brain ruined. Your perfect 100% is going to go away.
Okay. My body's ready.
Ah. Do you have anything else this week? I can't, like, I'm just
No.
waiting to blow your mind now.
Should we mention the thing about the CRTC? Since we did
Yes.
bring up phone plans and phones. Go ahead.
Do you mean unlocking? Or do you mean
Yes. Yeah, the unlocking thing. Oh, what were we talking about? Oh, no, not the thing in the notes. No, the unlocking thing.
Yes. We mentioned it on Future Chat 2 weeks ago, but if you have a cell phone and you are currently under contract, or if you're not, if your contract is expired,
But if you have service with the carrier.
yeah, if you have service with a carrier, or even if you don't, if your phone is locked to the carrier that you are with,
Yes.
you have every right as of December 1st in Canada to go to the carrier, and they must now, it was legislated back in June or whatever, that they must unlock your phone for free as opposed to being able to charge for it previously, which was usually about a $50 charge. So
But
I
again,
was,
they
yeah.
still required you to have service with them at the time.
Wait, what do you mean?
Like, okay, say I switch from Fido to Telus, but I still have a Fido locked phone in my drawer.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm with Telus currently. I can't go to Fido with my old phone and say unlock this for me.
Yes, you can.
No, you,
They
no,
cannot have
no.
locked.
Yeah, they can. You have to have someone. It doesn't have to be you, but someone that has Fido service with that SIM in that phone. Say unlock this for me. You cannot take a phone that you do not have service with to that carrier and say unlock this.
Where
This
did you read that?
that was on Reddit today because someone asked about that and said they took an old whatever phone. They had since switched carriers, but they took an old phone of theirs to their old carrier and say, "Can you unlock this?" And they said, "No, you need to sign up for a new plan, and then they'll unlock the phone." And they contacted someone, or someone contacted the CRTC and said, "Yes, their legislation falls under people who currently have service, and the legislation is for the current customers, not for just people who bring up whatever random phone to them and say unlock this."
Even though it's locked to their
Yeah,
carrier, to
you
that
need to have
carrier.
someone who has service with them currently to bring that phone to them and
But it
say,
doesn't have to be their phone.
no, I could get someone who has service with Rogers or Telus or whoever and say, can you help me unlock this phone? And that'd be fine. You're still, there's that level of trust to say that they're going to do it or whatever.
That's so weird.
It kind of makes sense though, because then you could just take any random phone, like steal a phone,
That,
and just go get it unlocked.
but phones have to be sold unlocked now after December 1st. They have to be.
Possibly. Okay,
I
I
100% guarantee
sure.
that.
I could see that.
Like the goal is to have no charges for unlocking phones at all.
Right. Right.
So this is like the weirdest reverse loophole I've ever heard of.
Kind of, but I can also kind of see the reason for it.
What would be the like what from the carrier's perspective, what would be the reason?
Like a security thing.
What security of what?
If I go and steal someone's Telus phone and then take it to a Telus booth and say I need this unlocked, and then you can just throw your own SIM card in it. I don't know. Maybe there's that element of, well, you have to be able to like unlock the phone. Like security wise unlock the phone before they can do whatever to it.
Mike, we're not talking about like unlocking the phone, like putting in
No,
the.
I know. I'm just saying, like, I'm trying to come up with a hypothetical situation
Okay,
where
so here's a
not where the carrier not unlocking the phone, like to that carrier.
is the responsible thing to do.
Yes, that's right.
Okay,
I'm trying to come up
here's
with
my
that.
counter example.
Okay.
I walk into a telestore. I say, I stole this phone. Can you unlock it for me? They say, no, we cannot do that. The mic loophole restricts us or means we don't have to do that. And then I say, okay. And then I walk out of the store and then I turn around and I walk back in the store and I say, hello, I stole this phone. I'd like to sign up for a TELUS plan for it. And also, once I have that plan in place, can you unlock it for me? And they say, sure. And then you walk out and then you walk back in. You say, I'd like to cancel my TELUS plan, please. I just signed up for it and I don't need it anymore. And then they cancel it. And then you have an unlocked phone. The whole thing is on its face
Maybe.
ridiculous.
I don't know. I'm just trying to give their side,
No,
Rob.
I understand you're trying to give their side, but does that not seem like a perfectly valid example of why that's ridiculous?
Are you assuming that you have or are able to like home screen unlock it? So you have access to the phone, or this is like a fully locked, both home screen wise and carrier wise?
Well, if they can't get into the phone, they can't unlock it anyways
Well, that's
because
what I
you
mean.
need
I
the
don't know.
IMEI.
I don't know if they can. I figured they wouldn't be able to.
They wouldn't
So
be
I'm
able
just
to unlock it. Right.
right,
You need the IMEI for the phone for them to be able to unlock
right.
it.
Mm,
I want
yeah,
to try to unlock a phone now that, like, I want to. Julia has a. Do you need Do you need like a mobile service with them? Because like I'm not
I
a
don't know.
I'm a Bell customer with internet and TV and
Oh
home phone.
yeah, well obviously you have to be a mobile customer.
So
Uh,
Julia has a phone that's locked right now to Bell,
sure,
but she's no longer a Bell customer.
right. Yeah,
She
under the current rules,
They
she
wouldn't
would need
have to unlock it,
no,
but if she paid them, they would unlock it.
maybe.
Because the whole thing is this whole thing is about fees. They still have to unlock it. They can just charge you for it
I don't know about
under the
that.
previous rules.
My understanding, and this might be my naive or ignorant understanding of it, is that you need like an active SIM from that carrier to be in the phone in order for it to be unlocked. But that may not be the case. I don't know. Because I know when I got, because I had a phone unlocked, like I bought a, not used, but someone else's, like a resold brand new TELUS phone for my Note 4. So I took it to like a third party repair shop and they factory unlocked it for me for like 75 bucks or whatever without me having like the telesim.
Hmm.
They have whatever random sims on their end that they can use. Like they have spare sims that they put into phones to unlock them. But I think like an active sim is required to do the unlocking.
Okay, so I'm on Fido's website right now. This is what I was reading when I was coming up with this. Under an FAQ, which I guess I'll put a link to this. There's an FAQ on Fido's website. How do I unlock my wireless device? The first step, find your IMEI number, which is can be entered in the from the dialer. You enter a code, or you can find the IMEI number in settings. Once you've found the IMEI number, contact us. And for Apple devices, we will unlock your device remotely. To complete the unlocking process, you must back up your iPhone, erase it, and then restore it with another carrier's SIM card. So it explicitly says you don't need your SIM card. For non-Apple devices, once you receive your unlock code, simply insert another carrier's SIM card and the device will prompt you to enter it. The unlock code.
Right. It's right. Okay. So you'd need. Okay, I see what you're saying. So it's safe with your case with the Bell one.
Mhm.
You could factory reset or whatever they said,
Yeah.
and then put in the Fido one,
Yeah.
and then Bell would give you the unlock code to allow it to be used with the Fido SIM.
Mhm.
Okay. But it needs a SIM card. Just doesn't have to be
It
a Bell
seems
one.
like it needs a SIM card, although you
Right.
can get like I don't. It seems like it wouldn't be necessary. I haven't done any research on this because I haven't bought a locked phone in a super long time. But from what I hear about unlocking, it doesn't usually need the device to be restored with another phone. Like it would need another SIM card to be entered in.
Okay.
but I don't know that for a fact. But this is all super weird.
Right.
And like this is obviously like this has only been in place for 3 days.
Right. So
Um,
like phones obviously have like preset unlock codes in their firmware or whatever that's
um,
assigned by IMEI. Like otherwise, how would if they don't have their own SIM in there, how would they even communicate with it or look anything up on it? They'd have to have some sort of database of like IMEI to unlock code lookup.
maybe. Or
That's the only way I could
or they have like each
see that
carrier has a
working.
database of IMEIs and whether they are locked or not. And then once you say you want to unlock, it generates a code. Like for Apple devices, there is no code required. For non-Apple devices, which I don't know how they say non-Apple, does that just mean Android or does BlackBerry and Android work the exact same way?
There's like Windows Phone too.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Windows Phone. Um, there's an unlock code, but I'm guessing that's just Android that they're referring to under non-Apple devices.
And what was the Apple device method again?
They will unlock it remotely because Apple's unlock thing is different anyways. Like I think it's just
Is it
through
through
Apple
iCloud?
servers. I don't think it's through iCloud, but I think it's through Apple's servers.
Hmm.
But anyways, yeah, I'm very intrigued, and now I want to go into the Fido store and say, or go into the Bell store and say, "Can you unlock this,
You
please?"
should try.
But not say that I'm a customer. But like, I have this Bell phone. It produce documentation to prove that I own it, or that Julia owns it at least. Like, go in with her. We're not a Bell customer, but she needs this phone unlocked, and get them to do it.
And they would say, sure, sign up for this plan and we'll be happy to unlock it for you.
it do you understand the ridiculousness of that statement, though, right?
After talking about it, yes.
No, but I mean, like, yes, you can use this phone on any carrier you want as long as you sign up with our carrier, and then we'll gladly do it. It doesn't make any sense. It's completely opposite of the
Right.
incentive that they could have.
But they probably sold it to the CRTC as like a security thing, saying
Even
that they
though
don't want
there's
people to
no
go around
security
unlocking.
aspect.
Right. They don't want people going around unlocking phones that aren't theirs.
Right. So the thing that should be like kind of the PSA then, I guess, is you like if you're leaving a carrier, make sure to
Get it
unlock
unlocked
it
first. Yeah.
first,
Yeah. And that's what was talked about in the Reddit thread.
which is
We
just so
can
dumb.
link
So
it
dumb.
maybe if I can find
I
it
need to
here.
go. If you can find that Reddit thread, that would be great because I need
Okay.
to go and post some stuff in there.
No, like there were. I think the general feeling was that it was unfair. Like it shouldn't be that way.
Yeah. Good. Because it doesn't make any sense.
Right. But I
Okay.
think it's better than the way it was.
It's definitely better than the way it was, but there's this weird, like I said, reverse loophole that doesn't make any
Yeah.
sense.
Yep.
All right.
For sure.
Well, I'm glad we solved that. You have anything else you want to talk about?
No, that was a longer
Okay.
mini topic than
That was a longer mini topic.
expected.
All
That was
right.
a sub mini topic. That's a
Yes. Yes, it
second mini
was.
topic.
All right. In that case, I'm going to stop the broadcast. We'll sign off for the week.